Scholars and cultural commentators have metaphorically described society as a melting pot in which diverse individuals fuse together to become a more harmonious and homogeneous whole. And in more recent years, others have described society as a multicultural mosaic or as a salad bowl in which diverse elements are juxtaposed into coexistence. Now, each of these descriptions has its champions and its critics, and while we may disagree on which of them is best, one thing is clear: diversity is here to stay. And when it comes to the workplace and the marketplace, having diversity is not good enough if it isn't being leveraged. What's also clear is that in today's global collaboration economy, the ability of diverse individuals and organizations to creatively share human and physical resources is disrupting traditional business models. Now, some think it's just a trendy fad, but I think this type of purposeful, radical collaboration is the new normal. Collaboration is no longer an optional activity in the modern economy. And the truth is that the leaders and organizations who fully embrace and know how to wisely leverage diversity in all of its forms will continue to benefit tremendously in terms of greater innovation, engagement, profitability, and social impact. In short, I believe that history will tell the story that collaborators won in the 21st century. But if we're honest, non-traditional collaboration isn't just a 21st century phenomenon. Way back in 1567, confronted with the problem of ships running aground because of inaccurate navigation, Spain's King Philip II offered a reward to the individual who could devise the most accurate method of determining a ship's longitude at sea. Now, this pioneering approach would go on to be adopted by other monarchs and legislatures across the European continent for centuries to come. Now, in the mid-19th century, an open call was made for volunteers to crowdsource the words in the English language. Over 6 million submissions, and 70 years later, the very first Oxford English Dictionary stood as a testament to the power of wisely leveraging diverse crowds. Now, crowdsourcing and the creative outcomes that come from smartly leveraged diversity are not new, but they're quickly redefining how we work, give, eat, move, and play in the modern world. And it turns out that the kindergarten skill of playing well with others is still in style. We're in a new era, and I believe it's time to introduce a new picture that conveys a more nuanced message about our new reality. A picture that shows us that diversity without inclusive collaboration yields no value. I propose a new picture for us that can provide us with insight into how leaders can bravely seize the opportunities that are presented by an increasingly interconnected global marketplace, and then truly leverage the power of diversity. It's an image that beckons us to return to the simplicity of our childhood, to envision the potential that lies within ourselves, our organizations, and even our societies. It's an image that shows us that back in kindergarten, we already learned all we need to leverage the diversity that's all around us. That image is the beloved crayon box. Few things bring as much delight and childlike wonder as the smell of a fresh box of 64 crayons on the first day of school. In classrooms across the world, this box of crayons represents the kindergartner's holy grail, a treasure chest full of fun and endless creative possibilities. This box represents boundless opportunities for individual and collaborative exploration and expression. It means something special to children around the world, and I believe it can represent something special for leaders too. Somewhere along the way, for many of us, the creative possibilities that diversity can bring were outweighed by the social and political inconveniences that advocating for diversity and inclusion can cause. It's probably one reason why the elite club of Fortune 500 CEOs is as white and as male as it is. There have never been more than 24 women at a time, never more than 7 blacks at a time, never more than 13 Latinos at a time, and never more than 15 Asians at a time to serve as CEOs of Fortune 500 corporations. As we can see, The demographic makeup of the class of current Fortune 500 CEOs nowhere near matches the current U.S. population. And as we attempt to lead organizations and societies that are both diverse and inclusive, there are 3 critical leadership lessons that this crayon box can teach us. The first lesson we can learn from this crayon box is that while every crayon has some things in common, focusing on the common labels as an excuse to ignore the complexity of our differences is a limiting strategy. There are some things that no matter how hard we try, we cannot and should not ignore. We cannot ignore that by the year 2043, demographers project that in the United States, minorities will be the majority of the population. We cannot ignore that according to the Pew Research Center, 10,000 baby boomers will be turning 65 every day until 2030. We simply cannot ignore that globally, the fastest growth in the college-educated talent pool is coming from the E7 nations, those nations comprising the top emerging markets, not from the G7, those leading industrialized democracies. While many of us embrace the power of diversity when it comes to educational background or domain-specific knowledge or functional expertise, many often try to explain diversity away when the conversation gets inconvenient. Ignoring the uniqueness of individuals is like opening the crayon box and treating every crayon the same just because they're all made of wax. And even for people who are colorblind, while they may not be able to consciously appreciate the differences in the box, research has shown that their brains can still perceive the difference. Let's take, for example, a gentleman named Emerson Moser, a senior crayon maker for Crayola, who molded approximately 1.4 billion crayons during his 37-year career with the company. And upon retiring in 1990, it was told that he shockingly revealed to everybody that he was colorblind. A man whose entire working career was devoted to creating colors wasn't able to see all the differences, but he said he knew they were there. And if Emerson acknowledged that every crayon in the box was different, we are without excuse. This leads to the second lesson that these crayons teach us, that leveraging diversity is an act of the will. Fully exploring the uniqueness of each crayon in the box requires us to rediscover our childlike curiosity, to ask hard questions, have difficult conversations, and try new things. It requires courage sometimes to take your least favorite crayons out of the box and try to make the highest and best use of every single one. And it also requires us to recognize that even the broken crayons have value if we're willing to not overlook them. If we're honest, there are many issues with overlooked crayons in our organizations and societies. Issues of gender inequality, discrimination on the basis of religion, sexual orientation, or disability status. But there is one issue that most organizations lack the will to truly explore, and that's race and ethnicity. Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz gave it a try with the Race Together initiative to spark crucial conversations in the communities they serve. Now, to be sure, the initiative might have benefited from some additional strategic refinement. But before it could truly get off the ground, Starbucks was crucified in the press. And instead of highlighting the need for the courageous conversation, other leaders slapped Starbucks on the hand for even trying to explore it. We need more leaders and more organizations that have the courage and conviction to explore the courageous conversation, no matter what. And if we're honest, one reason why more leaders don't demonstrate that will is because this crayon box can be problematic. We all have biases that short-circuit our desire to be curious. And if given the choice between a box of 64 Crayola crayons and a set of only 4, one red, one yellow, one green, and one blue, many of us would actually pick the set of 4. Why, you ask? It's simpler. It doesn't require as much energy to manage. Some might even say that the set of 4 is more efficient because these 4 colors are all you really need to make the other 60. This set of 4 reduces the cognitive load we must face when deciding which crayon to use for a particular purpose. After all, it's easier to evaluate 4 choices than 64. Having only 4 reduces the pressure to find useful purposes for the other 60 that we really don't value that much. And obviously, the box of 64 brings more possibilities for creativity and innovation, but it also brings more complexity because figuring out how to leverage each crayon isn't easy, especially the first time you open the box. This leads us to a final lesson that these crayons teach us. Leveraging diversity is not only an act of the will, but also requires skill. Having the will is a necessary but insufficient step if we don't know how to navigate cross-culturally and leverage diversity. Overcoming our biases requires cross-cultural agility. And while coaching and training can absolutely help tremendously, coaching and training are not enough without the experience of trying, failing, reflecting, and trying again. Just like the techniques of masterful artistry are refined through trial and error, the ability to think and act with a multicultural global mindset is a challenging skill that can be developed. Leveraging diversity is not only about desire, it's also about being committed to the growth-minded journey of developing cross-cultural expertise. And it's about finding others to partner with you to take that journey together. No matter how brilliant the crayons in the box, no box of crayons alone can make a masterpiece unless there's an artist with both the skill and the will to leverage it fully. So let's remember what this box teaches us. First, to not explain away our differences for the sake of superficial harmony. Second, to have the will to courageously rediscover our childlike curiosity and explore the value of every individual. And thirdly, to develop the skill that will enable us to move beyond our biases in order to fully leverage each person's best and highest contributions. Our organizations, our communities, and our world are depending on us. So let's get coloring.